Greetings from Vietnam. Listen, you're not fighting against flesh and blood, but against principalities. And what do I mean by principalities? Is it generational dysfunction? Is it a lack mindset? Are you a people pleaser? Do you harbor the spirit of jealousy, envy, bitterness, and anger? Is your principality addiction to drugs, alcohol, sex? Whatever that principality is, that's the weapon that's being used against you. And in my experience, yes, I prayed and prayed and prayed, but it's only until I named that principality, I looked it in the eye, I held myself accountable for where I needed to hold myself accountable, was I able to find release. Praying is cool, but I think we have a misrepresentation due to the church or any other religious sect not fully explaining what prayer is. That prayer to me is the desire, right? To be rid of something. However, there is another step. If you're praying for something and you're not taking action once, those opportunities present itself, that prayer is going to not bear fruit. If you know that your principality is alcoholism and whatever form of addiction, and you are saying to yourself, I no longer want to partake, but you find yourself in places where that alcohol is being served, then you're not going to win against that principality. If you are praying for, to get out of debt or to increase your finances, but you're spending willy-nilly, to block voids or keep up with the Joneses, then I don't see how that prayer can be answered. To me, facing those principalities mean being self-accountable and taking action where you have control over it. So if you're addicted and you cannot, through your will at this point, abstain from the drugs or alcohol, sex, or whatever you're addicted to, then to me, the way that you take action or help yourself is by seeking outside help or doing all that you can to overcome this addiction. And then to me, that sends a signal to God, the universe, infinite intelligence, divine mother, creator, whomever you pray to or believe in, to assist you. I had so many principalities that I was so bogged down in anger and helplessness and hopelessness that it just kept spiraling. It just kept, growing and growing, and it's like a tumbleweed that's rolling. It started out as one thing, and then I picked up another habit and another habit. And when I say habit, this doesn't even have to do with drugs. I'm talking about all its cousins, because hopelessness breeds anger. Anger breeds resentment, apathy, depression, anxiety. All of these things was just rolling into one. And so my advice to you is, if you are in that space where you're just feeling hopeless and overwhelmed, and you're praying and you're praying and you're not receiving any relief, you have to ask yourself some questions also. Do you believe that help is available to you? That's one of the questions that needs to be answered. When you pray, you must believe. Do you believe that you can be healed from that illness? That's a major, major principality that many people are dealing with, especially my black sisters. That high blood pressure. Do you believe that you can be relieved of that? Are you seeking other alternatives outside of pharmaceutical relief? I'm not telling you to give up on your medication, but if you have been diagnosed with high blood pressure for years upon years now, and it's not disappeared, then you're not getting to the root of what's causing that high blood pressure. Did you change your lifestyle? Did you, add exercise? Did you cut back on what you're eating? What have you done to take action to alleviate that dis-ease in the body? Because high blood pressure is the outward symptom, right? Something else is causing that. Have you checked out that principality? And this is where people, feel like I get preachy, or I'm blaming or trying to shame. No, I'm not. What I'm doing is being realistic, because sometimes the very thing that we are praying for, right? The answer is right there. What have you done to help yourself when it comes to relieving yourself of that dis-ease in the body, that dis-ease in the mind? If you're in a relationship where it's just toxic and loveless, and there's no growth or benefit to you mentally, spiritually, physically, and damn sure financially, why are you there? But yet you're praying for the relationship to grow and for him or her not to leave. Come on now, you're not taking ownership or accountability. There's some things that just must be pruned. It's past its expiration date. If you're with someone 20 plus years, or know someone 20 plus years, and that relationship has not grown, they are still the same person with the same attitudes, the same mindsets, and you're still praying and hoping for them to change. No, you have to change. And that's something that I realized. And once I changed, I realized, you know what? I don't need that fuckery anymore. I am better than that. That the person that actually got involved in that situation, she no longer exists. And many, many of you, like I once did, are holding on to things that you've outgrown. You want that person, and you want them to change, right? That is who that person is. And in my opinion, to be honest with you, you're preventing that person from growing and becoming the best version of themselves, because you're putting up with all their silly, their foolishness, their silliness, so they can't grow. They're comfortable, you're comfortable. You're both hindering each other's growth. And that might sting, but it's the truth. Sometimes the best thing for you is to, have a clean break. Choose your heart. It's hard living in a loveless relationship, a stressful relationship where you're being cheated on, disrespected, you're not being protected. Physically, you're being verbally abused, or even physically abused. You're not being financially taken care of. It's one-sided. It's all an act, right? You told yourself this excuse of, hey, once the children are grown, you're going to get out of it. Well, the children are gone and they've left. Then some of you may use the excuse, well, I put all this money into the house. Okay, so you're trying to tell me brick and mortar is going to take the place of your serenity, your peace of mind, a house that can be destroyed if a strong breeze or fire comes through. You are willing to sacrifice your mental state, your joy, becoming the best version of yourself for something that can be destroyed like that? No, that's where your prayers are going to fall flat. Because the truth is, you're not being real with yourself. your insecurities, your lack of self-love, right? Your codependency and all your past trauma and fears won't allow you to leave. And until you get real with that person, and yeah, you're going to be disgusted, because facing the truth about oneself is never easy. You've got to face the fact that you're needy and you're dysfunctional. And I'm not being harsh. I have been where I am telling you to go now. That's the only way you can come out on the other side. Those are principalities. Nothing's going to change. You're going to keep making excuses. You're going to even say, oh, I'm too old to start over. There's no one that can love me. Those are decrees. Those are affirmations. There's power in the tongue. Who says that you're too old? Who says you can't find real love? And the truth of the matter is, if you were in a dysfunctional, abusive, one-sided, loveless relationship for years and decades, you shouldn't even be thinking about love, to be honest with you. You should be thinking about uncovering the real you. Cultivating a real relationship with the real you. Who are you? You were a wife, you were a husband, you were a mother, Okay, you have a job, you have a business, you have a career. That's what you do. Who are you? Do you even know that? And until you can really understand it, what I'm asking you to ask yourself, those principalities are going to, have a hold on you. And you're going to continuously be stressed out, unhappy, miserable, and projecting all of that emotional damage onto other people. You're going to have ongoing sleepless nights and chronic dis-ease in the body because you're not being truthful. And the truth is, sometimes you don't even realize that you're not being truthful with yourself, because you've lived in this lie and this dysfunction for so long. So all those prayers are going unanswered. You keep asking God for signs and for deliverance, and he, she, whatever, keeps showing you that you need to start over, that the way that you're living, that the choices that you've made is not beneficial, to you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. You've got to give it up. And that's the thing that I remember. I wanted to move forward and be happy, but I kept holding on to the past, knowing damn good and well, that it was not good for me. Fear is a hell of a thing. But my new, I once saw this acronym that I've made it my own mantra now. Fear is no longer fear to me as you know it. Fear to me is facing everything and rise, Do it afraid. Choose your heart. It's hard living in a loveless relationship. It's hard working on a job where you can't stand to go in. You hate a Monday morning to come, right? You call out, you're getting sick, you don't want anybody to speak to you, you just leave me alone. That's a life sentence, right? You keep going around family members. They're not your family, they're your blood relatives. A family inspires and uplifts you. They make you feel, loved and included. You can go to them and get advice that's uplifting and constructive. If you're in a jam, you can, rely on them. You're just fed, you nourishing. It's not you showing up and being, the the life of the party. It's not you cooking all the food, It's not you constantly pouring out and giving to them. It's not you having a problem and, you confide in one of them and then your business is all over the place. That is not a family. That's not a healthy family structure, You've got to make these decisions, and we get trapped in these cycles because we've been conditioned family over everything. No, healthy family over everything. And that's how you have to change the language. You know, these types of cliche comments of family over everything, with blood is thicker than water, that's a damn lie. You know, and until you start being truthful, that's another principality. You've got to face these principalities. Let me tell you something that I've learned, and I'm so dead ass about it. If I'm not okay, then the people I care about, I can't do anything for them. If I'm giving you all of me, the last of me, to prove that I love you, that's some sick shit. No. If I give you my last dollar, then what the hell will I have? You know? If I'm standing on shaky legs and I can barely stand up, but I got to rush to the kitchen to try to make you a cup of tea, how does that prove that I love you? No, that proves that I don't love myself. And these are the types of traits that we pass on to our children, you know, especially the girls, you know. Loving a man or your children means, you know, working yourself bone dry. Rinse, repeat. No. That's dysfunction. And then it passes down to the point where you have women actually judging other women if they decide that they're not going to work themselves to death. We judge them and we call them weak. Imagine that. When a woman decides, hell no, I'm not doing that. I'm not staying in a relationship that's loveless. I'm not staying in a relationship that's supposed to be a two-parent home, and I'm doing all the work. Plus I'm going out and bringing in an income while that man comes home and sits his ass up on the couch and watches TV or plays a video game after his 8 hours, and then my other shift begins. No, that's madness. That's not love. That's dysfunction. That's how we were programmed. You know, and other women are hating on certain segments of women that says, no, I'm not doing that. That is not what I signed up for. And the men won't understand that, because if he watched his mother do that shit while he was growing up, he has been conditioned that that's what a woman does. He doesn't even have the capacity or the mentality to realize that his mother was constantly running on E. And now he wants to judge every woman and choose his wife based on that dysfunction. No, we have got to change this. All of these things are principalities. You know, we've got to look ourselves in the eye. You know, get up in front of that mirror. I've done it a million times. And really ask myself, is this how you really want to live? No. And that's why I ended up traveling through Southeast Asia for 23 months and counting now. I'm currently in Vietnam. I'm actually headed to the beach. You see the coconut trees in the back? Because no, I've decided that I wanted to love me. That giving and giving and giving and giving to prove how much I love others, nothing good came out of it. Nothing good came out of it. I actually taught my girls and my granddaughter even though they didn't want to, how to abuse me in a form, because they're so used to me giving and giving and giving and giving that even when I was complaining, you know, they didn't say it out loud, but they was like, Mom, you always did this. You know, it's like Thanksgiving or something. You ever, you know, for many of you who have, as moms who always did all the holidays and, you know, to provide for your kids and to make it into this so-called American family living, you know what I'm talking about. It takes so much out of you to prepare for these, you know, to host a major Thanksgiving and Christmas, dinners and all of that, especially working a full-time job and running your business. And from the moment you decide that you want to cut back or you don't want to do it anymore, these same people that have watched you run your blood to water will look at you like you're crazy, not understanding that you're tired. You don't want, not even if you're tired, you just don't want to do it anymore. No is a full sentence. I don't have to explain. But this is what we pass on to our children. This is what we teach our sons. This is what we teach, our mates and our spouses. No more of that. That is madness. So now, this is what I've been doing. Traveling through Southeast Asia, 10 different countries, including China, and living in each area, doing what I feel, pouring into myself. I get up when I want, I do what I want, and when I choose to make a video, it's because I'm nice and relaxed, and I'm walking to the beach. There's the beach in the background. I'm going to sit under some coconut trees. I'm going to meditate, say some affirmations, listen to the ocean. This is the life I choose now, because I realized I was literally running on E. And so back to come full circle, I was asking you to name your principality. It's quick to blame others outside of yourself, but the truth is, you have a choice. You have a choice to say, hey, you know what? I don't want to live like this anymore. That's it. Full stop. No explanations. I'm going to do what it takes to create the life that I want to live. I no longer want to people please. I no longer want these dis-ease in my body. I no longer want to be on these medications. I no longer want to squander my money on people who chooses not to grow up and who chooses just to do whatever they want, and then think that you're a bank. I choose not to stay in a relationship that is loveless, that is draining me. I no longer want to be intoxicated and hang around groups of people that's doing the same thing year in, year out. No growth. That shit is so tiring. At least for me it was. If that's what you like, then I love it for you. I'm speaking to those of you who want change. Name that principality. Name that thing that has you. Name it. When you name it, it sheds a light on it, and then you can go from there. God helps those that help themselves. And helping themselves, when you help yourself, what are you helping yourself from? What do you want? Name it. Where have you gone wrong? Name it and be honest. Nothing like lying to yourself, I'm so serious. Many people ask me, hey, I want to travel the world like you. And then I ask them, can you go to the movie? Do you go to the movies by yourself? Do you go out to eat by yourself? And their answer is no. And then I tell them straight up, then you can't do what I do, because I do everything by myself. Sometimes there are people you meet up with in the hotel, absolutely. But a lot of these people want to go out and drink and party. I do none of those things. So if you can't be by yourself for long periods of time, that's a principality. You need to find out, hey, why is it that I cannot spend time with me? That's a huge sign that you need to get to know you. What are you running from that you always need to have people around you? You always need a background noise, right? And my answer sometimes offends them, but it's the truth. I don't have time to, to cuddle anyone and try to make it sound. It's straight across the board. It's to the point. Can you go to the movies by yourself without feeling away? Can you go out to eat? Right? Because here, through Southeast Asia, you're going to eat by yourself. And if you can't do that, you're not going to enjoy the trip. Or you can only travel short term, you know? But yes, name your principalities. Name it. Sit with it. Accept it. Process it. Heal it. Over and over and over. And yes, it's painful. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, you're going to feel shame, because what happens when you're healing, you get to, to recognize all these different patterns and how many times you betrayed yourself, how many times you abandoned yourself to be liked. What they now call a pick-me. I don't like that word, but that, because it sounds so cruel, but it's true. But don't feel bad about being a pick-me. What happens is, somewhere in your lifetime you were rejected, or you wasn't loved correctly, and it caused an anxiety in your nervous system. Everyone who doesn't want to be chosen. But when your whole life is centered around being chosen and staying in harmful places because of it, that's no bueno, that's no good, right? I love when you guys like and share my videos, right? I do. But it's not the end all be all, because I know that when I create the video, it's coming from a place of really wanting to reach someone else that felt exactly as how I did, right? And to give some insight, to let them know it's okay. I was there, but look at me now, right? I squandered decades of my life force, energy, staying in places and relationships and jobs and having circle of friends and that did not serve me at all. And even when they showed me clearly, I still hung around, because they were all I felt that I had at the time. That was a lie, right? I've now created a whole new life path for myself, and I'm truly, truly happy, and I really want the same for you. But you've got to face that principality. You've got to name it. And when you also name it, you remove the shame and the guilt and everything from it. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for what you didn't know. Forgive yourself for what you did or didn't do. Forgive yourself for what you said or you didn't say. Forgive yourself for all the things that you didn't ask. And most of all, forgive yourself for what you allowed. My name is Nicole Rebecca. Like, follow, subscribe, share, do all those wonderful things that social media requires you to do. Until next time, be well.